Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Emma Lefebvre, and I had so much fun the other day comparing different mediums, watercolor, gouache, and acrylic, that I wanted to do another video today comparing just watercolor and gouache by simply painting a tree. Gouache is something I really want to get better at, and I thought it would be fun to compare the two. I am not great at gouache. It's not my comfort zone. So today you get to watch me figure it out and struggle, and then compare the differences between watercolor, which I'm super comfortable with, and gouache, which I'm definitely not. So let's jump in and get started. Okay friends, so today I wanted to do another kind of comparison video similar to what I did here, but in real time with just watercolor and gouache. A lot of you guys really love this video and these paintings, so I wanted to show you how I would paint a tree with watercolor versus gouache and kind of take you through my step-by-step process. So I will say that gouache is not my medium. I enjoy using it, but it's still something I'm trying to figure out completely. So I might get a little bit more frustrated with that, but you guys can watch it happen in real time. But I want to give you kind of the rundown of the differences and how to use them. So I'm just trying to make that a little bit more even. So for this painting comparison, I am going to be using this Paul Rubens sketchbook. It is 100% cotton hot press paper. Now usually I don't recommend or use hot press paper for watercolor, but this paper I actually really enjoy. And usually I find that hot press papers, because they're so smooth in texture, they don't soak in the color and the water as well as a cold press where it's nice and textured. And then for wet on wet technique, you don't get as much of that drying time, that longer drying time where it stays wet for longer. But this paper I actually find pretty great for it. Well, pretty good. It's not amazing as a textured cold press paper, but it is pretty good. You do have to work a little bit faster, but not too much faster. It just doesn't have a lot of texture. It's nice and soft, but it is ideal for gouache because it is so smooth. So I'm using this paper. I'm going to be using my Ultimate palette, and then for my gouache, I'm going to be using this Shinhan Professional Designer's Gouache, which I really like. So we will get into that, and I'm just going to be using the same brush, my size 8 round for both. Just make sure that with gouache or any other, paint, you just rinse it thoroughly to make sure no paint is stuck inside, but that's about it. Okay. So I'm going to go through kind of just like the elements of the tree and kind of how we're going to approach this. So the difference between watercolor and gouache: watercolor is transparent, gouache is an opaque medium. However, watered down, it can be transparent as well. And there are benefits to using your first layers as more watered down washes, so the paint underneath doesn't get activated as easily as you're layering. So I'm going to start off just by doing a simple kind of 3-circle tree like this. Okay, this is kind of like our guidelines to help us with the shading and the shadows. And then I'm going to do a little trunk here. You want to try and make it on the thinner side. I find a lot of the times we make the trunk too thick and it just doesn't look natural. Okay, and it's going to kind of come down like this, and you're going to have branches going off into there. Okay, so what I want you to think about is the light source. So usually the light source I have from like the top right or the top left corner, and this will help you to determine where your lightest values and colors are going to be hitting the tree. So I drew these 3 circles to help guide you, because each section is going to have a light area where the light source is hitting it, so lighter areas, and then the shadows. So if the light source is coming from here, I want you to think that this is going to be a highlighted area, this is going to be a highlighted area, and this is going to be a highlighted area. All of those top right-hand corners of each circle is going to be lighter, and each bottom left edge of the circles are going to be darker. And this just helps guide you with your shading. Now, because we are working with a transparent medium, we do need to lighten up our pencil marks so you don't see them underneath. Okay, so I'm just going to lighten it up a bit, but just so you guys can see the guideline. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just lighten it up a bit. And what I'm going to do, like I say before the difference, you need to work light to dark with watercolor. Gouache, you can actually start darker, but watercolor, you need to work light to dark. So I'm going to pick my lightest color and value to start with. And I'm going to use this green gold, which is a nice kind of like yellowy green. And I'm actually going to cover the whole tree area in this color. And then we're just going to start layering darker colors on top with some wet on wet technique. Okay, now you can see those pencil marks underneath, which is what I was talking about. Those will not go away. So if you don't want pencil marks, don't paint over it. Okay, I am going to try and leave a little bit of white space to some of the areas, just so maybe we can have some branches peeking through. And it doesn't have to be perfectly circular either. Okay, trying to make it really kind of messy so it doesn't look like 3 balls. And go outside those circles a bit. I just wanted a bit of a guideline for you guys. Okay, like that. Now I'm trying to keep it still wet, so I'm just kind of going over some of the areas here. Okay, then I'm going to pick my medium color, and that's going to go on the bottom half, kind of on the circles. Not right at the bottom where our deepest shadows are going to be, but like kind of like the medium, like middle part of that. So I'm going to grab some olive green, and I'm going to start tapping it while it's still wet on those middle parts of the circles. Okay, and we're just doing a simple tree. This is not going to be super detailed. Okay, you see that blurry kind of effect you get with the wet on wet, which I like, which you won't really see much of with gouache. Okay, and we are going to have to do some layers with this because you're not going to get a lot of texture, because when you do wet on wet with watercolor, you get a blurred out blended look like this. So when it dries, it can look a little bit flat, which I love for a lot of reasons in a lot of techniques that I use it for. But in this, we want it to be textured with leaves and all that, so we are going to have to make more layers after. And then I'm going to go in with my dark green. I just like doing wet on wet just because I feel like it provides a good base in those deeper shadow areas. Okay. And it blends together. Might look a little funny. Like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do my trunk while we're waiting for that to dry. So I'm just going to grab, should I use my, what color is this? I don't even know what colors I have in this palette. I have burnt umber is here. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to try and start off with a lighter wash because then we can develop more shadows when it dries. Like this. And I'm just going to do some tiny little tree branches. Now the green's kind of bleeding into it, but that's okay. We can kind of paint over it after. I'm just doing these loose roots at the base. Like so. And then I'm going to take a little bit more and just go through some of those white areas where you might see some branches. Trying to use just the tip of my brush to get it there. Okay. So then I want to wait for this to completely dry before I continue. Okay, now that it's completely dry, we can add more layers for texture. So I'm going to, again, grab my light kind of golden, green gold, and I'm going to start doing little textured leaves in our highlighted area. And because we're working wet on dry now, you get that distinct brush stroke. It's not going to blend like it did when we did wet on wet. So you get a bit more texture to it. Like that. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of my green gold with my olive green just to do just kind of under the green gold area, so it can start kind of blending a little bit, bridging the colors together. And I'm just tapping with the tip of my brush. And then just moving into my olive green completely. Trying to make more leaf shapes, kind of coming off those shapes like the circles to make it look a little bit more wild. Like that. And then lastly, my Perylene Green, my darkest green, to build in those deeper shadows. And there we go. Okay, so there is our watercolor tree. Working light to dark. Oh, I forgot my trunk first. Hold on. So I'm going to grab my burnt umber. I'm going to do a little bit more darkness, especially on this side of the tree. There would be a bit more shadow. I'm probably going to go even darker than this. Just want to build up that saturation just a little bit. And I'm going to take off some of that pigment and just do some really light kind of textured strokes on the tree trunk. Then I'm going to grab some black, mix it with my burnt umber, and just make some of these branches a little bit darker. I don't want them too light. Okay, because there would be most shadow right where all of these branches would be covered by the leaves. And then the bottom or the side here, and then maybe even like the sides of the roots down here. Okay. Then again, if you want to just take off some of that pigment, just add a little bit more line work to it, you can. And there's our watercolor tree. Okay, so now let's work with gouache. So for gouache, you drop it on the ground, and I'm going to be using this palette that I have. It's a ceramic palette. The thing about gouache, I love gouache, but I have tubes of gouache and I have to like squeeze out the amount that I need every time, and I'm still kind of on the newer side to this, and I feel like I don't always know the exact amount to do. The other thing with gouache is it actually dries darker than you think, so you need to go lighter than you would think, which is something I'm still trying to figure out. So I'm going to start off with this moss green to see what color. So that's a pretty kind of medium green. I also have this Viridian. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of black, I think, to that, just a little bit, because I don't want it to be too dark. So here's, oh, this is white, which I will probably need a decent amount of. Here's my black, just a little bit. Yellow for some light highlights. Probably gonna need more of that moss green. And we're just going to mix and try. Actually, for this, I'm probably gonna use my brushes from Sarah Burns. They're actual gouache brushes. So I'm gonna use the size 12 and the size 6 for this, instead of my watercolor brushes. You can use watercolor brushes. They're water soluble. They won't damage your watercolor brushes, but I just wanna use her brushes. So I'm gonna do that. Okay. So I'm going to start by working dark to light. So I want to mix up my darkest green first, which I'm going to take this Viridian and a tiny bit of black. And it's a little bit on the cooler side, but I actually don't mind that. So I'm going to, if you want to, again, we can do our ball guides. Give us a better idea, right? And I'm actually going to place it all over this area. I'm going to work dark to light. I am going to use this dark paint as a guide for the whole tree. And I'm going to see how that looks, because you can. It is opaque. I feel like it has to be a little bit more watered down, because the thing with gouache, and what I've noticed when I've used it before, is if you have a really thick layer of gouache on the base, and then you start trying to layer lighter colors on top, if there's too much brush movement there, then you risk lifting some of those and reactivating some of those previous layers. So I'm just going to make it a little bit more watered down than a nice thick gouache consistency. Again, like I said, I'm also trying to figure out this whole gouache thing myself, right? So if I get it wrong, that's okay. Then I don't know what I'm teaching here, but you're just kind of watching me go for it, okay? Okay. It's really hard for me not to try and dip my brush in the water at all times, because I'm so used to doing that with my watercolor. That's just because it's how it's activated, but it really waters it down when you do that. So I have to try and get out of that habit with gouache. But like, look how dark and intense that is already. I really like that. I feel like gouache is just something I'm going to have to practice to get better and better. But I already love this color. So I mixed Viridian with some black. Okay. So there's that. I forgot I do need to mix or put down my branch color, or my trunk color. So I'm going to do that. I have raw umber here. Let's see what raw umber looks like just on its own. And then I might add some black to it to make it a little bit darker. Yeah, a little bit more black. Ooh, that's too much. Yeah, trying to figure it out is hard. See, now it's too dark. And it dries darker, so I have to figure out the ratio. This is with any new medium though, right? Like, you have to figure out how much you need for any kind of paint, right? And it's just learning through experimenting and practicing. So I'm sure I'll get it one day. Okay, this isn't as warm as that brown, but that's okay. Okay, this is going to be a slightly different trunk. I do want it a little bit warmer, but I don't have that color with me, so I'm just going to go with it like this for my first layer and see how it looks. Okay, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to let this completely dry, then I'm going to do my next layer. Okay, so now I'm going to use my medium green, kind of my moss green, to do that medium section Now I let it dry in between because I wanted more defined brush strokes for this. I keep adding a little bit more water just because I'm trying to figure out this consistency. I wanted to add, but like, look at that layering, how you can layer the light over dark. What was I saying again? Oh yeah, so I let it dry because I want these to be sharp kind of brush strokes, right? Now, if you do wet on wet with gouache, I don't think it's going to be exactly the same as it is with watercolor where it's super blurred out. We can actually try. Because it is a thicker paint, it's not going to be the same. It can be similar with the wet on wet but I don't know how blurry it would be. Maybe we'll give that a try here after, just for fun, because I'm still learning. Okay. But I love the layering look, and we can just do another layer on top of this after as well, which is just keep going. But you can keep going reverse way with this too. You can keep adding depth by adding darker shades, and then with this one you just add lighter. But I find it's almost easier to get those dark little, you know, leaves behind because you're just layering on top. So we'll see the final product and how it ends up and which looks better. I don't actually know. I'm going to add some yellow to this to make it brighter. And so it's not fully dry, but see how you're not getting that wet on wet, same kind of blurred look. Okay, I'm going to make this top part yellow. I might add white to the highlighted area after that I'm doing. I feel like it looks so cool. I don't know. And I might intensify some of those dark areas as well. I think it looks kind of cool. Okay, I'm going to try to intensify the darker areas just because it's kind of all blurred together. There's not a lot of separation. So I'm going to take some black and that Viridian again. Get a little bit more black just to get it even darker. Maybe more black. I don't know. Because I want a bit more texture right there. I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. I'm gonna go in between as well. And I'm just trying to kind of go around some of those green, the moss green color to get some of that darkness in there. I don't know. I feel like once I add the last highlighted bit, it's gonna look pretty good. Let's add some highlight to this tree trunk because it's looking a little sad. Okay, I didn't need as much white as I thought I did. So I'm just adding a little bit of white, to my raw umber. And I'm gonna highlight mostly down here. Okay. Like that. And then I'm gonna take some of the darker brown and make this darker, and then some extra little branches kind of coming through some of those white areas, and then really making it darker there on this side. I don't know if this is working or not. Don't love the brown I'm using for this, but I'm gonna grab some of that darker color. I don't know. Okay, I feel like there needs to be a lot more light on here. I'm going to dry it to make sure it's really dry so nothing really mixes with the yellowy lighter leaves, and we can really get those vivid light colored leaves on top. I feel like anyone watching at home that actually does gouache, like paints with gouache, they're like, you're doing it wrong. I don't know. We'll see. So now I'm going to go over top with an even lighter version. I just added some white. I don't know if it's working or not. If it's making it pop the way I want it to. Maybe even more white. I mean, I feel like it looks a little bit more dull. Maybe I put too much. If you can hear my crazy kids yelling downstairs. A little bit falling down in the front. I feel like there needs to be like a medium, maybe a little bit of the Viridian in the yellow. It's like too dark in some areas. There needs like a medium green. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. You guys are gonna have to tell me what you think. I feel like some of those light colored ones need to be a bit more dense right at the top. So it's like really highlighted. I don't know. I feel like it's looking a little meh. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like if I keep going, I might ruin it even more. I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. But that's kind of it. That's gouache versus watercolor of how I would paint a tree. Let me know what you guys think you like better or looks better. I feel like this tree is just not the greatest, but it's still fun to try and do. And it is fun to layer the light colors on top of the dark colors for a change instead of trying to work the other way around. So again, let me know what you guys think, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it, and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a great day, guys. Bye.